Hi, I'm Maggie. Thank you for stopping by Crafts the Charm today. I'm so glad you're here. Today, I'm really excited to be building a storage ottoman out of cardboard boxes. This is the cardboard box that I'm going to work from. I got a couple of dining room chairs in this box. I have chairs and rugs from this company, and I have no idea how to pronounce the company name. I don't even know how many syllables it is. If you know how to pronounce it, please tell me in the comments. I really like their rugs and furniture. Now, I recorded a very short video before I began with my plan and a little prototype. So let's go listen to that and then we'll come back. So I started by sort of drawing out my ideas, and this is rough, but I want to cover this with mats that are like this from the Dollar Tree. So I'm constrained by the size of these. So this is an accent rug, 16 inches by 24 inches, but I measured it at more like 15 and a half inches by 24 inches. And I don't think I'm going to use this pattern, but I have several patterns. So originally I thought maybe I would try for maybe 22 inches for the size of the cube. I'm measuring it sort of against an ottoman I have in one of my rooms, but I want to have a top that goes over this, and I want the rug to be able to extend from the bottom of one of these sides over the top and then down the other side. So I knocked that down to 20 inches, which still might be a little tight because I need to have like a little lip there. We'll see. And I thought we'd try 19 by 14. And I'm going to use at least 2 pieces of cardboard with the green going in opposite directions. And I'm going to have a fold, so I'll have 2 pieces that fold over and glue to the other pieces, and then I'll put the other pieces of cardboard inside. And then I thought maybe some kind of triangular braces, maybe like pillars in the corners. So I started to build a prototype out of cardboard. This is a 0.5 centimeter to 1 inch scale. And let's see, can we see the folded over? Yeah. You can see this piece has the folded over cardboard. I just used hot glue to glue this together. I'm thinking wood glue for the real piece, but we'll see. So on both sides that has a piece that folds over, and the same thing on this end. And then these pieces are just flat. And then I put the inside pieces, which have the grain going in the opposite direction. So you can see that one runs top bottom. The other piece runs this way horizontally. So for all of them I have 2 pieces, but for these pieces, because I have the folded over part, I cut those smaller. And I think that's something I'm going to have to figure out. Both of these pieces, both this one and the inside piece for the sides that are just the full width. We're going to have to measure those after we put the outside together, just to figure out what that space is between the tabs. And then we'll have the width of the extra cardboard here. So this will be a little narrower on the inside than the 19 inches for the outside piece. And then I started to try to build like sort of triangular tubes to put inside, but they didn't seem like they were going to cut it. So instead I put together just these sort of triangular blocks, and I don't know how many of those I might need in here. But at this point, I'm not going to build any more of the prototype. I'm going to go take apart my cardboard box and just start building the outside frame. I'm also going to need a bottom to this, so I was thinking just a piece of cardboard glued to the bottom, or I don't know if maybe it should be on top of this frame. I'm not sure about that, but I feel like I need to get started with the actual piece, and then I feel like I need to upholster it before I figure out how the top's going to work. So this is as far as I've gotten with a plan right now. I'm going to use my box cutter, and I don't know how many blades this is going to take. Hopefully not a lot, but I'm going to start with a new blade because I think that I'm going to need a sharp blade to do this. So I'm going to go take that box apart. Now, I didn't end up following that plan exactly, but I will show you what I did and how I deviated from it. And here's my cardboard haul from that one box. Probably what was most time consuming was removing all of the tape and the stickers. And now I haven't cut it apart completely yet. I'm waiting to see what size pieces I need. Now I am going to start by building the box, and I am going to follow my prototype for the box. So I'm going to cut two pieces that are 23 inches by 14 inches, and I will have 2-inch flaps on either side. And then I'm going to cut two pieces that are 19 inches by 14 inches. So one of the things that was most challenging was figuring out how to most efficiently use my cardboard. And not only do I have to keep in mind where do I have pieces that are the correct size, but I also have to remember that I'm going to be changing the grain of the cardboard when I glue pieces together to make stronger pieces of cardboard. The other challenge with cardboard is that the edges aren't always neat, so I will have to square off edges before I do any cutting. So I am starting with just cutting those pieces. After I've cut those pieces, I'm going to score the two 23-inch pieces 2 inches in from either end so that I have flaps. So with those pieces cut, I'm now going to glue them together. And I'm going to use a combination of wood glue and hot glue. I do think people make furniture with just hot glue or maybe even hot wood glue. I don't have any of that, but I'm going to use wood glue for my sort of permanent glue, but hot glue to hold it together temporarily while the wood glue is drying. And I also have some little clamps. I only have 4 of these little clamps, and that does impact how much I can glue together at one time. So what I'm going to do is put the wood glue on the flaps, leaving some spaces to put some hot glue in. And then I'm going to attach the flaps to the 19-inch pieces of cardboard. And I'm doing this on the floor so that the bottom of this is level. Press it tightly, get it all straight, and then clamp it. So now we have that frame, and once that is dry, I'm going to follow the plan and put pieces of cardboard on the inside of the frame. Now these pieces of cardboard need to have their grain running in the opposite direction. And for these pieces, I need to measure. So I'm going to measure between the flaps on the 19-inch pieces of cardboard. So I will get something that is roughly 15 inches by 14 inches for the inside of each of those. And then I'm also going to measure the inside, even though it should be about 19 inches, the inside of my other pieces, because I want these to fit as best I can. Now, you can see the grain of cardboard in 2 places, right? If you look at the outside of the cardboard, sometimes you can see through that paper covering, you can see the corrugation, so you can see the direction that it's running. But if you're having trouble seeing it on the outside, you can also look at the end. So if you're holding the piece of cardboard and looking at the end, if the corrugations are running towards you, you'll see that waviness at the top. And if the corrugations are running horizontally, you'll just see the end of a corrugation, so it'll look sort of smooth at the top. Now, once that had dried off camera, I did cut one more set of pieces for the inside, and again, measured before cutting, because now you've got the width of the cardboard to take into account. And these inside pieces have the same grain as the outside pieces, so I've sandwiched a different grain between the inside and the outside pieces. And now this is feeling quite sturdy. So I wasn't too sure on my prototype how I would do the bottom of the box. What I decided to do was use flaps again. So I took my box and I put it on a piece of cardboard, but in at least 2 inches from the edges of the cardboard, and I traced the inside of the box. Now, after I traced it, because I wasn't positive that I had held it so that I had 4 right angles, I then squared off what I had traced. And then I measured 2 inches out from that square, or actually it's a rectangle, I think, and cut out that rectangle. And then I cut the squares out of the corners of that and scored those 2-inch lines so that I could fold up flaps and have a piece that would fit inside my box. Now one of those pieces, one of those flaps, I scored it too deeply and it ended up coming off. So really this is only held on with 3 flaps. And what I did was I used the wood glue and hot glue and glued that to the inside bottom of the box. And then I reinforced that with some staples because I don't really have a way to clamp that to the bottom. For that last flap that came off, I did also glue that inside, even though it's not functionally doing anything to hold the bottom on, just because I wanted that to be the same on all 4 sides. So just for consistency. I then cut a piece for the outside bottom of the box. So I just traced around the bottom of the box and cut that piece out and glued that to the bottom, and then just put some heavy books on that. So I have it upside down and put some heavy books on the bottom for that to dry. So now I want to reinforce the inside bottom of the box, and I hope that what I'm doing here is okay. I don't have a lot of large pieces of cardboard left, so what I'm doing is piecing together the bottom of the box, and I'm making sure that I do one layer where all the pieces have the same grain, and then the next layer all the pieces have the opposite grain. So I did 2 layers like that pieced together, and then I did one large piece again with opposite grain from the last piece that I put in, and I laid that in the bottom, and putting that on a flat surface with some heavy books to hold all of those pieces together while the glue dries. Now you might remember from the prototype, I had some little stacks of triangles in the corners of the inside of the box, and I'm going to do that. I'm not sure exactly what size those should be. What I decided to do was figure out how big they need to be based on ottoman feet that I plan to put on this ottoman. So I have these old ottoman feet about, I don't know, somewhere between 8 and 10 years ago. I recovered an ottoman, and at that time I replaced its feet, and I kept the old feet. So I'm going to put those on this ottoman. So basically I figured out where I wanted them to be on the bottom. I thought maybe about 1 inch in from the edges of the ottoman, and figured out where the hole would be that I would need to drill into the bottom of the ottoman. And then just made sure that my triangles would be larger than that so that I would be drilling into this layer of triangles. So that ended up being 7 inches on a side. Now, before I talk about the triangles, I just want to talk about the feet. You may not have old ottoman feet lying around to put on your ottoman. You do not have to put feet on an ottoman. Plenty of ottomans don't have feet. But if you do want to put feet on the ottoman, I did have a few ideas. And if I didn't have these feet, I probably would have tried one of these things. So the first 2 ideas are these pencil cups from the Dollar Tree. They're very lightweight, and I like that because we're putting them on cardboard. My ottoman feet are a little bit heavy. So these come in round and square, and I would think you could drill a hole through the center of these and then drill it up into your ottoman. So 4 of those. Or, you know how I like to save turned wood from the side of the road, so I found these table legs once, and I would think you could take a piece of this table leg, 4 of them, and drill a hole through it and use that for your ottoman feet. So there are other options if you want to put feet on your ottoman. I just happen to already have some ottoman feet. So getting to the triangles. So what I'm going to do is just cut a 7-inch strip of cardboard, and then I can cut 7 by 7-inch squares out of that strip of cardboard, and then cut down the diagonal, and I get triangles. When we're cutting the triangles, we don't need to worry about the grain of the cardboard, at least if you're cutting right triangles like these where the sides are the same size, because you can flip it and get the grain running in the opposite direction. So what I ended up cutting was 6 triangles for each corner. And I actually cut 1 extra just in case something happened to one of my triangles. And what I did was I glued those triangles together again with wood glue and hot glue, just making sure that the grain was alternating in direction as I glued them together. And then I put heavy books on top of those until they dried. Once they had dried, I glued them to the inside of my ottoman. And then once that had dried, I turned my ottoman over and I measured where I would want to drill the holes for my feet to go in. And I drilled holes with a drill bit that was quite a bit smaller than the screws that are attached to the feet. And then I just put one foot in to make sure that would work, but I'm not attaching the feet yet. I just wanted to make sure that this whole plan was going to work before I continued with it. Now, I rethought my idea for the top of the ottoman. I don't know what I was thinking. When you have a storage ottoman, usually the top fits inside the ottoman, so it sits on top of something that's inside the ottoman, some kind of lip. So I am going to build those triangle pillars, and I'm going to measure inside the ottoman to see how tall they need to be, so that I have maybe about an inch lip at the top of the ottoman. So I measured that, so from my triangles, up to an inch from the top of my ottoman, and that came out to about 10 inches. So what I need to make are triangular shaped pillars that are 10 inches tall. If I were to make them 7 inches, like the triangles at the bottom, then I would need 7 inches for each side, so 14 inches. And then the hypotenuse is a little bit under 10 inches because you figure 7 squared plus 7 squared, 49 plus 49 is 98. And we know that the square root of 100 is 10, so the square root of 98 is going to be a little bit less than 10. So let's say 10. So that's 24 inches for the triangle, and then I'll need 1 or 2 more inches for the flap. But I don't have any cardboard that's long enough for that. And in fact, at this point, I have recruited another box. I've run out of this furniture box, or large pieces of it. So, if you were ever in school saying, when am I ever going to use this math? Here's an example. I needed to figure out what is the largest size triangle that I can make for the cardboard that I have. And basically, our variable is the size of the side, and what we want to figure out is the length based on that variable. So I just plugged that into a spreadsheet and found that I had enough cardboard to have triangles that were 5.5 inches on a side. A right triangle that is 5.5 inches on the 2 sides will have a hypotenuse of approximately a little bit more than 7 3/4 inches, which means the total cardboard length that I need is approximately a little bit more than 18 3/4 inches plus, say, 2 inches for the flap. So I cut 4 10-inch lengths of cardboard by 20 3/4 inches, and then I scored it at the 5.5 marks, and then again at the 7 3/4 mark, and bent it into a triangle, glued the flap over. I then glued those into the corners of my box, and I did 2 at a time so that I could clamp them. I put glue on the bottom and on the sides of the triangles and then clamped them in place. Once those had all dried, I thought that I would put a triangle on top of each to make it look neater and to give my top more to rest on. So I put the same 7 by 7 by 10-inch triangles on the tops of those. And then I checked the level because it didn't look level to me. And I found that 2 of them were lower than the other 2. One seemed lower by approximately 1 cardboard width or height, and the other seemed lower by approximately 2. So I added 2 more triangles to one piece and 1 more triangle to another piece. And after I did that, it seemed like it was level. So at this point, I have accomplished taking a large cardboard box and from it making a smaller cardboard box. Yes, I'm very proud of myself. But I do have a very sturdy cardboard box here. And I think that I'm going to stop this video here because there is a lot more work to do on this ottoman, and this video is already quite long. So next week we'll finish this ottoman, we'll upholster it, we'll make the top. I would love to know what you think so far in the comments. If you know about making furniture from cardboard, I'd love to know if I've made any mistakes. What I have seems sturdy to me, so I do hope you'll come back next week and see me finish this ottoman. I'm very excited by how it turned out. If you liked this video, please give it a thumbs up. And if you enjoyed this sort of content, please subscribe to Crafts the Charm. Thank you for spending time with me today. Take care.